The New York Rangers are forced into an impossible decision as they have a franchise-altering decision to make before the draft. We're going to break that down, as well as a decision to make on one of their young star players and some insight into whether they will move him or not. And it's going to have a serious impact on not just the roster, but the outlook of this team heading into next season. We're going to break that all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers news as we head into a very busy offseason. Make sure to go down below, hit that subscribe button. It is free. And again, you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. But let's jump right into it. The Rangers have a very big decision to make before the draft this year. And it is whether or not to keep their pick this year, because if you all remember, they've technically traded their pick this year, although it could be deferred to next year. So there is a decision that has to be made here before the draft, and it's to keep the pick or to, defer it to next year. Now, personally, before we jump into anything, I just want to say my personal opinion, and let me know in the comments down below what you think. But I think that they should keep this year's pick and defer next year's, because next year's pick is going to be worse, because this Rangers team is going to make the playoffs next year. That's just how I feel about it. Let me know in the comments what you think. But right off the bat, they should keep this year's pick and defer next year's. That's how I feel about it. That's the way that I think they should go about it. Now, that being said, keeping this year's pick means that you can still trade this year's pick to do something with it if you don't want to make a draft pick. And as we know, the Rangers, not the best organization at developing players. I mean, EJ Emery looks like he's going to be a very good defensive defenseman one day in the NHL, but the Rangers, the fact of the matter is they don't have the development staff in place right now. So maybe it would be wise to keep the pick and then trade it for a player that you can use on the roster. But nonetheless, let's get into it. From Larry Brooks, he said there might just be a reason that the Rangers put a top 13 condition on the pick rather than a standard top 10 pick. Perhaps the player personnel staff identified at least up to a dozen prospects worthy of retaining the pick. So there were some conditions on the trade, of course. And again, Larry Brooks was saying to keep or not to keep the 12th overall, and this is from Phil Kosher. If you asked me a few months ago, I would have said send this year's pick. The more I think about it, the less I think they will. I would bet the plan would be to use this pick to trade for an asset to improve this roster, sending next year's instead. So it gets even crazier. I was, thinking at first, and again, there's so much you can do with draft picks at the draft. Again, you can trade up, you can trade to get an asset for your team, you can trade away your pick entirely, right? And I was thinking that maybe you just keep the pick, you make the selection. But we know about this Rangers team. I think you keep this year's pick because next year's pick is going to be worse anyway. This one will hold more value. Again, anything can happen next year, but I think this team's going to be better next year. But you hold on to this year's pick. You then trade it. You flip it for an asset, a defenseman, something that's going to make an impact next season, because it's a 12th overall pick. You can get quite a haul for that. Again, you're not going to get multiple players or anything like that, but you can get a very sturdy defenseman in return for the 12th overall pick. And not even that, like maybe you want to go out and get another forward. We don't know what's happening with Chris Kreider, right? Obviously, we don't know what's happening with some of the RFAs either, right? Like if K'Andre Miller's out the door, not only do you already have to bolster up the defense, you must get a defenseman if K'Andre Miller is not returning next year. And that's not to say that K'Andre Miller is that good of a defenseman. You just need a body in there. You need a guy who can play at the NHL level. So that's going to be interesting to monitor as well. So let me know in the comments. Would you keep this year's pick? Would you defer next year's pick, or vice versa? Would you defer this year's pick and keep next year's pick? Personally, I think I'm in alignment here with Phil. Maybe not even flipping it for an asset. Just keep this year's pick. I think you keep this year's pick. It's a 12th overall pick. You can get an asset for it, or you make the selection at 12. You're going to get a good player there anyway. And then, because you drafted way higher last year with EJ Emery, of course, and the last couple of years, right? So keep that 12th overall pick. Either make the selection, and we can all hope and pray that he ends up developing in this organization. I think that's the move. But let me know in the comments what you think. Now, to move on, they have another decision to make, and that's Alexis Lafrenière, whether to keep him or trade him. And I know a lot of you are listening to that, and you're like, how? How is that going to happen? Look at the money he makes. I agree, but he's got to start playing better. Now, he didn't have the greatest season, right? And it looked like he was finally coming into his own last season. If you look at the advanced analytics too, it would suggest that his season wasn't that bad, especially on the offensive side, which is a little crazy. But heading into next year, I do believe the Mike Sullivan effect is going to take effect, and he is going to have a much better season. I feel like there's going to be way more communication between the coach and the players. I think this is a coach that a lot of people were saying the opposite. This is a coach who's worked with young players before en route to a Stanley Cup. So I think that this is going to be the thing that unlocks for good, finally, is going to unlock Alexis Lafrenière at the NHL level, and he's going to go off, and it's going to be Mike Sullivan. And again, if you look at last season, I mean, if you're looking at the advanced analytics, I mean, this has never been a really good defensive player, but I think that Mike Sullivan can work with this player to not make him into a defensive stalwart or anything like that. Like, he's not going to win the Selke or anything like that, but just be responsible in your own zone. These are the reasons we do these things, you know, explain it, a new system in place, and obviously do your thing offensively, because at times under Peter Laviolette, I thought that he was put into a box sometimes, and besides all that, it just didn't look like he wanted to play for the guy. It looked like Peter Laviolette lost the room. I think we can all see that last season he lost the room. So I do think Mike Sullivan is going to unlock this player a little bit, and if he doesn't, then they certainly have to look at trading him, because last year just was not good enough. Simply was not good enough. Now, listen, I don't think they're going to trade Lafrenière in the offseason. That makes no sense. Come into next season, see what happens under Mike Sullivan. But there was a point last season that since signing his extension, the 50 games that followed signing his over $7 million extension, he had 10 goals, 15 assists. He had 25 points in 50 games. He just signed an extension for over $7 million, and he was a half a point a game player in the 50 games that followed the extension, and he was also a minus 17. Now, following the extension, the Rangers were horrible, just awful, playing some of the worst hockey I've ever seen this franchise play. But again, I do think that he's going to be able to turn around next season. And if you don't believe that, let me know in the comments as well, and why. I am curious to see. But you know, this is from Blue Shirt Bulletin. I understand contemplating the market for Alexis Lafrenière if it's part of a foundational change for the New York Rangers, but short of a transfer, you know, if it's not a blockbuster deal, this makes no sense. And I'm with them on this one. I think a lot of people can agree with this. You would be selling not even low. You would be selling through the floor at this point with Alexis Lafrenière if you wanted to trade him. So you're going to come into next season with him, but they're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to start having the conversations, because if it mirrors what happened last year, that it's just not good enough for the money that they're paying him at this point. Yes, the salary cap's going up and it should age better, but it's only going to age better if he starts to play better and he starts to play up to his potential, which we've seen. And I think the biggest thing from Mike Sullivan coming in here is a lot of what Gerard Gallant was saying, right? Like, the talent doesn't win championships. Hard work is always going to beat out skill, right? If skill doesn't work hard. We know that. So teams win championships. I love this quote from Mike Sullivan. And again, he went on to say is, what I will tell you is that I think it's important that every player earns their opportunities and no one is entitled to an opportunity, which means if you're not playing well, you're going to be on the third and fourth line, or you're going to be out of the lineup, which is something for the top guys, at least, we didn't see last season. So I'm excited to see what Mike Sullivan's going to be able to do to try and unlock, you know, Alexis Lafrenière next season. And I think that he will. But again, let me know in the comments if you think that that is, you know, something that's not going to happen. But I think that it will, because this is a player who's only going to be, he's only 23. He's only going to be 24 heading into next season. And very disappointing year. He played all 82 games. He only had 45 points. And we saw at the end of last year and in the playoffs, I mean, he was a point-a-game player in the playoffs. Who does that? Like, he was having an unbelievable run. So we know what he can do. We've seen the potential, and he's still young. So I think it's just going to be able to play for a coach that communicates well and can work with younger players, which will unlock him. And again, there was a quote here that, you know, he struggled to find consistency in his game. I'm obviously disappointed in my year. We have a long summer. We can work on a lot of stuff to come back next year and have a big year. So, you know, everyone's saying all the right things. Mike Sullivan's saying the right things. Chris Drury's saying all the right things. Everything has to be put into motion. They have to take action, and things have to improve next year. I'm looking for Alexis Lafrenière to have a monster season next year, because he has to be moving forward. He has to do it. He has to be that guy for this team, and he was a former first overall pick. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to at least start talking about it heading into next season, but wouldn't move off of him yet. You have to go into next season with him, but let me know in the comments if you think he's going to go off next season. I think he will under Mike Sullivan, but if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.